welcome to another edition of Retracing History here on Readout Productions. And you can see we are in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania once again. And we're actually here on Remembrance Day weekend. This is a local holiday that's hosted usually mid-November to commemorate the dedication of the Soldiers National Cemetery, which is right behind me. The reason this dedication is so important, in addition to the fact that it gave a proper burial to over 3,000 Union soldiers killed during the Battle of Gettysburg, it was also at this dedication that President Lincoln gave his famed Gettysburg Address. This weekend is marked by a massive parade, which I'm very fortunate will be participating in this year. There's a lot of activities happening around town, and it gives us a wonderful opportunity to retrace the streets of Gettysburg, Volume 3. Overlooking the highly busy intersection where Steinway Avenue, also the Baltimore Pike, and the Tawnytown Road intersect that keep heading up into downtown Gettysburg. Right over this busy intersection, we got a monument here. This is for the 55th Ohio Infantry. And so you've got to love the detail they put on here. Here we have a member of the 55th behind a stone wall. 2nd Brigade, 2nd Division of the 11th Corps. And this was erected by the state of Ohio. 55th Ohio Infantry arrived here at 2:20 p.m. July 1st in this position, which held throughout the battle with severe losses. Its skirmishers drove back those of the enemy and seized a barn between the lines, where 12 of its men were surrounded and captured by the enemy's line. Casualties: 6 killed, 31 wounded, 12 missing. The 55th organized for 3-year service at Norwalk, Ohio, autumn of 1861. Served in the Mountain Department, 1st Corps, Army of Virginia, then the 11th Corps, Army of the Potomac. Was transferred in September of 1863 to the Army of the Cumberland, served in Grant's campaign against Chattanooga, Tennessee, and with 20th Corps in Sherman's Georgia and Carolina campaigns. Mustered out July 11, 1865. This stone structure has an unusual name, the George House. It's currently being served as old-timey photos. But it was here where General Joshua Reynolds' body was brought after he was killed during the first days of fighting here. Sandwiched between the Gettysburg History Center and the Appalachian Brewing Company, we do have a wayside here about the 1913 reunion of veterans here, or known simply as the Grand Reunion. This was the largest reunion in terms of the amount of veterans that would attend it. And a little bit written up here, between July 1st and 4th of 1913, the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg was commemorated with the first major reunion for all Union and Confederate veterans. 53,407 veterans attended, 44,000 being Union and over 8,000 being Confederate. An encampment of 6,610 spread across 280 acres constructed a house and feed them. The Grand Reunion attracted press correspondents from all over the nation and Europe, along with more than 100,000 visitors. It was anticipated that the event would be not the celebration of a battle, but the reunion of the nation. The voluntary meeting of so large a contingent of old foes at the most revered battle site of the war was seen to demonstrate that the last embers of the former days had been wiped out, and there should be proclaimed a new national brotherhood. The old foes readily fraternized in the camp, on jaunts around the battlefield, and during the formal events and speeches held in the great tent set up at the southern edge of the encampment. In the end, they agreed to a future joint reunion. Wow, I can't speak. And here we have blankets being administered out for the veterans, baking of bread in bake ovens that were constructed here. This is pretty cool. If you look closely in the image, you can, oh, come on. There we are, that's better. You can see Pennsylvania State Department of Health on that ambulance, that horse-drawn ambulance assisting veterans. A Union veteran. And then the 1913 reunion produced one of the most famous images from the Civil War, even though it wasn't actually during the conflict. This handshake that was held at the angle, which is, several hundred yards that direction, where the high water mark in Confederacy, as it's known today, is. Whoa, my iPhone's freaking out. President Woodrow Wilson we're not going to speak about his politics, was here for the reunion. And then here we have two old foes meeting on the steps of the Eagle Hotel. And this is a map of the actual encampment. Now, I'm going to hope one day we can do a proper retracing history about the encampment. Go to all the sites and the locations, similar to when we retraced the footsteps of the U.S. Marine Corps when they were here in 1922. I actually got a... In a sense, this structure actually is a bit of a historic landmark, not relating to the Battle of Gettysburg, of course, and really only in the past century. But if you came and visited Gettysburg back in, beginning in the 1960s for the late 20th century, this was the American Civil War Wax Museum. You would go inside and it was a whole, basically how they had the whole building set up. It was all partitioned off in wallways, zigzagging back and forth, giving you, with wax figures, vignettes of every major moment in the American Civil War. The strangest thing about the exhibit was there was a display about Stonewall Jackson's mortal wounded in Chancellorsville. I didn't notice till a few years later, but apparently there would be if you stood there long enough from the exhibit, a curtain would draw behind Jackson's wax figure, and lo and behold, you would see a vestige of Jesus Christ. Yes, I'm not making this up. There are photographs that an employer of mine has that showed me. Wild. I don't remember that part of the experience. I do remember the end of the tour. You would have to kind of be in a waiting queue until you go into their theater, and they had a really old documentary that would play telling the Battle of Gettysburg, but certain parts of the documentary would cut to on the floor in front of the screen. They had all these larger than life wax figures displaying key moments of the battle, like General Reynolds' death. They displayed, I'm going to say, a mortal wounding of another general, but I can't remember who. I know there was an operating table, and then at the end, the whole thing would light up to depict Pickett's charge. And that's actually still an exhibit that's part of the new Gettysburg Heritage Center. So this is no longer the Wax Museum, it's the Gettysburg Heritage Center with a open floor plan with more interactive exhibits and just standing behind. Okay, yes, we're very impressed. Standing behind a guardrail and looking at wax figures. And we are passing what was once one of Gettysburg visitors' favorite, and also the butt of Gettysburg visitor jokes, General Pickett's Buffet. Oh boy, I remember several Easters. We came to Gettysburg as a kid, like for Easter for some reason. I don't know why, but we always picked Easter, and we had to reserve to get the Easter buffet. That was a big deal for Young Readout Productions. I actually get to take part in a reserved dinner. This site has actually all been acquired by the American Battlefield Trust. Okay, was that in 23 or was that technically in 2024? Man, time flies. But relatively recently, all of this property was acquired by the American Battlefield Trust, which does mean that General Pickett's Buffet will be no more eventually. Will be part of another page of Gettysburg history. The actual restaurant was in the basement. And then this floor right here was a gift shop, and they also had the Tour Center Battle Theater. Apparently it was a theater where you just watched a documentary about the battle. I never actually saw that documentary. If you did, let me know in the comments section, because I was always wanting to see the documentary as a kid, but my parents were like, we saw too many orientation films on this trip. We don't need to see another one. So let me know in the comments section. What did you think of the Battle Theater's depiction of the Battle of Gettysburg? Ooh, if you look up there, the mural's still up there. I don't know if you can make that out. And then I guess, yep, there was the entrance to the theater. Did it have two entrances? Looks like it did. Soon to be just a part of the pages of the Gettysburg history textbook. And then, of course, you could barely see there. Oh, you can barely see there. I think it says going down, either says, I almost want to say it looks like it says going down to cafeteria. But that would have taken you down to the actual buffet. We're standing in front of the Lincoln Train Museum, and well, of course, Abraham Lincoln, very greatly tied to Gettysburg's history because of his dedication of the Soldiers National Cemetery, the delivering of the Gettysburg Address, which is partly why I'm here to participate in Remembrance Day, commemorating that event. There's been a lot of people, a lot of living historians that have interpreted Abraham Lincoln. One of the most notable was James Getty. And right in front of the museum, they actually have a memorial to Mr. Getty. You may not know, but a number of productions, a number of photographs you saw of living history events in the 20th century and early 21st century, more likely not, it was Mr. Getty who was portraying Lincoln. So dedicated to the memory of James A. Getty for his untiring efforts to inculcate, you're giving me words, inculcate the youth of America by his portrayal of Abraham Lincoln, and for his service as a member of the Confederation of Union Generals. And we've walked down this pathway past Pickett's Buffet. We've got a wayside here. Because there's all this build-up today, keep in mind, we are in the heart of the Gettysburg battlefield if we're here in July of 1863. At 4 p.m. on July 2nd, the 209th Men of the 8th Ohio were ordered to advance and hold this position. For 24 hours, the regiment was constantly engaged in murderous skirmishes, losing 40 men. During the bombardment on July 3rd, the missiles of both armies passed over for over an hour. Shortly after, Pickett's charge began as 12,000 Confederates stepped off from Seminary Ridge to your front. Despite their forlorn position, the 8th Ohio delivered a volley toward the oncoming enemy, which caused the Confederate front to break. The 8th Ohio then fired into the flank of the other advancing rebels. During the charge, the 8th Ohio captured 200 prisoners and 3 battle flags. Gettysburg cost the regiment nearly half its men, 102 killed, wounded, or missing. And here at the intersections of Strong Lane and Steinway Avenue, we actually have the monument to the 8th Ohio. 8th Ohio Infantry, Carroll's Brigade, 3rd Division, 2nd Corps, fought here July 2nd and 3rd, 1863. Ohio's tribute. The 8th Ohio Infantry was organized for 3 months, April 29th, 1861, and for 3 years began on June 24th, 1861. Took part in the battles of Romney, Winchester, South Mountain, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, Wilderness, Spotsylvania, Cold Harbor, and Petersburg, and many other important engagements. Was mustered out July 13th, 1864. The 8th Ohio Infantry, led by Lieutenant Colonel Franklin Sawyer, took this position at 4 p.m. July 2nd after a brisk skirmish and held it July 2nd and into the 3rd during Longstreet's assault. July 3rd, the regiment advanced and by left wheel attacked the enemy in flank, capturing 3 flags and numerous prisoners. And jumping from American Civil War history to Great War history, all this happening on the same spot, just in different time periods. Camp Colt, the Tank Corps. I think I've mentioned it on several Retracing histories that the Gettysburg battlefield was actually used by the federal government as training grounds for their Tank Corps during the Great War. The Camp Colt, established during World War I, was named after the 1800s weapon designed by Samuel Colt. It was the first U.S. post to train soldiers for the newly established Tank Corps. The 192-acre training camp stretched across the fields in front of you. Captain Dwight D. Eisenhower, given command on March 25, 1918, embraced this assignment, writing, "There were no precedents, and I was the only officer in the command." Eisenhower initially had no tanks, so he improvised by bolting machine guns to flatbed trucks. So I want you to imagine young Eisenhower somewhere out here driving around trying to train people how to operate a tank, but it's just a truck. It's just a Ford pickup with some wood, some timber painted black strapped down to its tailgate. Dear Lord. When 3 French Renault tanks finally arrived, they had no weapons. And actually, I don't think they had 3. From the research I've done, they had 1. I swear, from the research I've done, they did not have 3. They had 1 Renault tank, and this was several months into training. Eisenhower reported, "Again, we improvised. By midsummer, approximately 11,000 soldiers and personnel were on this post." In 1950, Eisenhower purchased a 189-acre farm adjacent to Gettysburg Battlefield, over in that direction. In 1969, the Eisenhower home and farm was donated to the National Park Service. With it being Remembrance Day weekend, we do have a number of living historians on the battlefield dedicating markers to their respective units they portray. Looks like we have one happening up here It's not at a monument to a regiment. It's actually a monument to the Grand Army of the Republic. That was the veterans organization that was formed in the aftermath of the American Civil War for Union veterans. That monument is for the last surviving GAR member. And it's located both here and also his hometown in Minnesota. I'm standing in front of Gettysburg's Quality Inn to discover what was once standing here, which was the doTERRA House. And it says here that images such as this one were produced on site here from the back of the doTERRA House. This is one of only 9 photos known to have been taken of the dedication ceremonies in Gettysburg on November 19th, 1863, where Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. Recorded by Peter Weaver from the back of the William doTERRA House, this photograph depicts the crowds in the distant National Cemetery. Note the tall flagpole in the National Cemetery with the distinctive gatehouse adjoining Evergreen Cemetery appearing at the far left. Visible in the foreground is one of the parking lots for the ceremonies that day, as well as an excavated area most likely related to doTERRA's brickmaking business. Yeah, you can see that over here. This is the parking lot for wagons, of course, and yeah, this must have been where he was pouring minerals out for his brickmaking business. The accompanying drawing portrays the doTERRA House, notes Confederate artillery shell, which is lodged in the second story of the building. You can see it right there. So the doTERRA House is where some of the only known images of the dedication ceremony of the Soldiers National Cemetery were taken. It stood approximately where this Quality Inn is today. Every Remembrance Day, the Gettysburg Foundation hosts an illumination of the Gettysburg National Cemetery. Volunteers place a lantern in each of the Civil War graves in the cemetery, as well as reciting the names of the fallen.
Frederick D. Clark, Company K, 78th New York. Unknown, New York volunteer. William C. Marsh, Company H, 78th New York. Leray Eaton, Company D, 149th New York. Frederick Phelps, Company C, 137th New York. William Murphy, Company I, 60th New York. Michael Malloy, Company C, 149th New York. E. B. Roberts, Company B, 14th New York. Unknown cavalryman. Unknown cavalryman. Orderly Sergeant James P. Cush, Company B, 59th New York. Unknown New York volunteer. Private Nelson Southard, Company K, 20th New York State Militia. John Capper, Company E, 2nd New York State Militia. Patrick McMara, Company E, 43rd New York State Militia.
That's going to conclude another Retracing the Streets of Gettysburg Remembrance Day edition. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want to follow us in our future adventures, first thing to do, consider hitting the like button down below that lets the YouTube or the Green Channel's algorithm know you do want to use social media to get edumericated. And then be sure to subscribe to us on both platforms to be the first notified when we go on our next adventure. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting us, keeping us on the road, consider going to our membership program, which is located on Ko-fi. Link is in the description below. For a small monthly fee, you too can join the Garrison. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time. So if you come to Gettysburg on Remembrance Day, one problem, there is several boatloads of people in town, which means any fine establishment you want to eat at, and there are many to choose from on a normal day. Yeah, you're probably not going to get inside. So I feel we've been very, very wise. I'm going to introduce this idea to a returning member here to Readout Productions, Brooke. We haven't seen you in a few years. What great idea did you come up with?
So what you do is, instead of going and waiting in line like a chump like all the other reenactors, what you want to do is order mobile pickup from Friendly's, which only takes 15 minutes and you get your food like instantly.
We are not sponsored by Friendlies, but we wish we could be.
We would like a sponsorship. Please give Redoubt Productions a sponsorship. Friendly's, thank you.
It's fine.
Remain calm.
Everybody, remain calm.